Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back. We are going to be breaking down the main card for UFC 297 coming up this weekend. Exciting headliner between Strickland and Dricus du Plessis. A lot of build-up to this fight, a lot of trash talk being exchanged back and forth between these guys, and a really interesting matchup. I think a lot of people, myself included, don't really know what to think about how this one's going to go. So excited to see this one play out. Obviously, the women's bantamweight title is on the line in the co-main event, right? We've got Mayra Bueno Silva taking on Raquel Pennington for the empty bantamweight championship. So, yeah, man, good card lined up. Arnold Allen's on this card, right? He's opening up the main card, so gives you an idea about how talented the rest of the lineup is. But we're going to start off first talking about a little bit of news and some shit that's been going on. Obviously, one of the big announcements that I missed from a few weeks ago, right? Like, obviously, I said I was in Australia, New Zealand in the last episode, all that good stuff. But one of the things that I didn't talk about was Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua. And that's a huge matchup, obviously, because Ngannou, after leaving the UFC, signing with PFL, hasn't had a single MMA fight yet, but he arguably beat the greatest heavyweight of our generation in Tyson Fury. And now he's lined up against I think what Anthony Joshua is like the golden boy of boxing, right? Like, he is everything that the heavyweight division is supposed to represent. He's got incredible technique, right? But also he just has the look. Like, he has the look of that guy. He's fucking shredded, good-looking dude. And him going up against Ngannou, I think Ngannou generated so much interest in another boxing match after the performance he put on against Tyson Fury. Ngannou obviously opening as a big underdog, and that's understandable because if you look at the fight on paper, Joshua should win. It's not, I understand, again, we've seen Ngannou box and he was super impressive, but I just think that part of that is him catching Fury off guard a little bit. Like, I feel like if him and Fury rematch, if I'm being completely honest, I think Fury would find a way to win. I think you would find a way to stay away from the power shots of Ngannou. And now, there might not be a lot of tape, but there's a little bit of tape on Ngannou. Now, that being said, I mean, Ngannou in that matchup did look good. Hands were always up, very disciplined, and the power is always there for him. And that's a big difference maker. When you got game-changing power like that, it makes your opponents a little bit more weary to come into range, right? So I think that he has that real knockout power that kind of made Tyson Fury, even when he did start finding success, Ngannou would land back, and it kind of made him hesitant to keep coming in and trying to attack. So it'll be interesting to see if Joshua has a way to get past that power problem. Can he string combinations together, start throwing feints and confuse Ngannou? My heart tells me yes, but to be honest with you, or my head tells me yes, right? But to be honest with you, my head told me that Tyson Fury was going to beat Ngannou in the original match, right? In the first boxing match that Ngannou had, rather. So I don't know. But great matchup either way. And you got to think, man, with the money he's probably getting offered for these fights, do we even see Francis Ngannou return to MMA unless it is against somebody like John Jones back in the UFC? I don't know. And with John's shoulder surgery, I mean, time just keeps ticking for him, man. I mean, after he gets his shoulder operated on, it's like he's going to have to recover. I mean, I think he already had the operation or whatever, but I'm just saying after that injury, it's going to be like 8 months to recover. And then he's probably going to want to go through a camp, so there's another maybe 2 or 3 months, right, to fight Stipe. And we're talking about probably him coming back at the end of this year sometime. And is he going to want to fight Ngannou, right? Even if they can somehow make it all work logistically and figure out all the contract stuff, like, is he even going to want that fight? Part of me thinks no. Part of me thinks that we might not see and also a lot of it is going to be dependent on the amount of success he has against Anthony Joshua and how far he wants to take this thing, right? Like, does he want to pursue boxing world championships? I think this fight coming up could be a very, very big tell. I think if he has success against Joshua, if it's a good fight, competitive, man, I don't know that we do see Francis come back. I don't know. Maybe, but who's he going to fight in the PFL that's going to generate as much interest as the heavyweights in the boxing world? I don't know. I don't think anybody, you know? There's not a whole lot of folks out there outside of the UFC that you want to see him fight. So I don't know. Going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out. But that was obviously a big announcement. Another huge fight that just got put on UFC 300. And we've been kind of waiting for some of these big fights to get dropped is Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje. And I feel like this is one of those like perfect matchups that honestly kind of came out of left field. I didn't see it coming at all, and I think that's why it was such a big announcement for the UFC. I don't think a lot of people put this matchup together, but if you look at it on paper, don't get me wrong, Justin Gaethje is like settled into the 155-pound weight class. That's his weight class. But Holloway has fought there before against Poirier, and Holloway has kind of run out of interesting options at 145 pounds. I mean, what's out there for him? Topuria is tied up fighting Volkanovski. Max has fought Volkanovski 3 fucking times. Like, he's already beaten Zombie, Ortega, Cater, Yair Rodriguez. I mean, what else is left for him in the division? So bumping up against a guy like Gaethje for the BMF title, I like this fight a lot, right? I think a lot of people, I've been reading on like Reddit and stuff, a lot of people are worried about like the power of Gaethje, I think. And I think a lot of people look at that Poirier fight that Holloway had and think, man, like you're just kind of doing the MMA math and think Justin will piece him up, and maybe. But Max is tough as fuck, man. He's got a great chin and he throws a lot of volume. He's constantly just peppering you with stuff, right? I think this is going to be a fight where they stand on the feet and trade for the most part. And man, you hate to like put these kind of titles on things because you think you're jinxing it in a way already, but it feels like fight of the year potential. I mean, these are two guys who you know are going to go out and get after it, and they don't really like to take each other down, and they have different styles, but they both have great boxing, right? Great boxing, great striking overall, but they have really good boxing, and their boxing styles are a little bit different. I think you see a lot more like traditional aspects of boxing in Justin Gaethje's games, the way he rolls with things and then comes over the top, whereas Max is just kind of steady pressuring you with volume, using a little bit of like, I wouldn't call it unorthodox, but I just think that when you look at Gaethje, his silhouette of him boxing, it would look more like a traditional boxer, right? But Holloway's got a little bit of a different style. So it'll be interesting to see how these two match up. Great fucking fight. I'm excited for it. And they nailed that one for UFC 300. That's a huge fight. Jim Miller versus Bobby Green is on that UFC 300 card as well. That's a big fight between two veterans. But yeah, I'm sure there's other stuff that I'm missing. I'll try to pick it up as I record more of these, right? We'll get on top of everything eventually. But right now, I want to just break down this UFC 297 main card. And the first fight we're going to start with, right, is going to be Arnold Allen versus Movsar Evloev. So Arnold Allen is someone who I feel like personally has potential to hold the title. I really think he's that good, man. He is a marauder. I mean, I've said that about him before in previous podcasts that I've done, but it's true. He just finds a way to land, and then when he lands, he fucking pours it on you. He's a competent grappler. He's got really good jiu-jitsu. Right now, in this matchup against Movsar Evloev, though, one thing that makes me nervous is, like, if you look back at Arnold Allen's fight against, who did he fight? Nick Lentz, right? You see examples, and there's a couple other fights as well, but where Allen lets guys get around behind him. And Movsar is an expert at that, like getting to your back with the body lock, right, while you're on the feet and going for takedowns from there. But Allen is always able to work himself out of these bad situations, right? Like he's got good enough jiu-jitsu that he usually ends up being able to work himself back to his feet, but he does give those positions up. And a guy like Movsar is going to be an expert in those positions, right? I don't think Arnold Allen is going to have like the kind of game off his back that Diego Lopez had, right? I don't think he's going to give Movsar those type of problems. He's not necessarily going to be a submission threat, but he is just good at staying patient, methodical, and taking his time to eventually get what he needs to work his foundation up and get back to his feet, right? Arnold Allen is good at that. He's competent. I don't believe that he's ever been submitted in his entire career. Let me make sure I'm not lying to you guys, right? But I'm pretty sure that Arnold Allen is, I think his only two losses, one was obviously to Holloway, but came by way of decision, right? And again, another thing about that Holloway fight is two decisions is how he's lost. But I really feel like in that Holloway fight, Arnold Allen was coming on strong in the 5th round, man. I think that he had a good fight overall, and Max was just a step ahead of him. Everywhere they were, Max was just a step ahead. Every position they ended up in, Max was a step ahead, right? So for Arnold Allen, I think that you look at that fight and you take away a lot of positives. I think you look and think, I can hang around with these guys. It's just a matter of fixing a couple things to get me over that hump to being at the elite level. I think Arnold Allen is capable of it. The question is going to be, can he hold off the grappling of Movsar? Because I think that Allen has a big advantage on the feet, but in terms of pure grappling and wrestling and just understanding the positions, I think Evloev has a big advantage there. And it's going to be interesting to see if Allen can keep him off of him. And again, Allen likes to throw those big shots, man, and those might present opportunities for him to overextend and let Evloev in on the takedown attempts. I don't know. I also feel that, like, I've gone back and forth on this one a bit, and I think that Allen deserves to be the favorite. Like, I understand that Evloev's grappling is high level and that it's elite, but Arnold can just fucking crack, man. That's what I'm thinking about. And also, like, if you look at his fight against, like, Calvin Kattar, he does a great job of controlling the outside foot positioning, right? He does a great job of all these little things on the feet, even though his technique when he's throwing, it's a bit wild and reckless. He's also doing a lot of small things right in between there that let him land so successfully. I think he's going to give Movsar a lot of problems on the feet, because another thing for Evloev is he likes to, like, pressure box you and then wait for the opportunities to open up, and then he goes for his takedown. But with those thudding punches of Arnold Allen coming his way, man, I don't know if the opportunities are going to be there for him to take Allen down. I kind of see this fight going one of two ways. I think Allen puts it on him on the feet and stuffs the takedown attempts, and we get an exciting finish from Arnold Allen. I think he finishes him inside like 2 rounds. Or I think we see a boring, drag-out fight where Evloev takes Arnold Allen down, exploits a weakness, and realizes that he can just keep capitalizing on that round after round, and he'll put a lot of emphasis on position and just controlling and staying on top, right? That's kind of how I see this thing playing out if it goes in Evloev's direction. But if I'm being honest, like I said, I love how Arnold Allen, I know he lost, but I love how he looked in that Max Holloway fight. I like that he kept trying new things. He kept mixing it up, coming in with a new strategy round by round. He didn't get tired, despite the fact that he throws some heavy fucking punches. Man, you also got to wonder, when you're getting ready for someone like Max Holloway, who you know throws a lot of volume, and you go 5 rounds with him, you got to think that you can let a little bit more out of the tank in the 3-round fight. So I think his cardio holds up. I think he's more powerful. I think he's going to be able to get himself out of enough bad wrestling situations that he gets it done. But don't be surprised if Movsar starts getting around to his back. Movsar, I think I said Movsar. Movsar gets around to his back, starts putting him on the mat, and just kind of looks to maintain it and keep him there. Keep him held down in those positions, though. If he can't keep Allen held down and control position, I think he's going to struggle in this one, though. Next is Chris Curtis versus Marc-Andre Barriault, middleweight bout, 185 pounds, right? Chris Curtis is one of those guys who's kind of had this crazy, not late career resurgence, but like mid-career resurgence, where I think he was kind of thought of as, and I think he will stand it, when his career is done, he will unfortunately like maintain the like journeyman title, right? I think that's kind of what Chris Curtis is and has been. He's had some good performances, but kind of losing in these in his fight to like Calvin Gastelum, like losing the big ones that would get him up into real title contention, right? But Chris Curtis is a great boxer. He comes out of the same gym as Sean Strickland, right? And it's no surprise that these guys both have good defense. He throws really crisp combinations when he starts letting things go. But I think that Barriault is just on, like, he's riding a 2-fight win streak right now, right? He's coming off a big win over Eric Anders. And Barriault just likes to fight gritty, man. And he's not afraid to get aggressive in order to do it, right? So I think that Barriault's going to be able to kind of pressure Chris Curtis up against the cage. And don't get me wrong, Chris Curtis is competent in the clinch. I just think that Barriault does his best work when he's making the fight dirty. And I think that if he makes this fight dirty, he's got a very good chance to beat Curtis up. Because I think Curtis wants to hold things more in the center of the octagon, look to counter, keep his distance, use good footwork. And I think that's going to be kind of hard to do against a guy like Barriault, because he is aggressive. He is willing to go through the fire. And in fact, when he gets into some of these clinch-like situations, now, in the Anthony Hernandez fight, he just kind of got it put on him, right? Like, Hernandez just kind of put a pace on him, out-wrestled him, and he couldn't keep up with it. But Curtis isn't exactly that guy. Curtis is going to want to stand and trade for the most part. But if you look at, like, the Julian Marquez fight, the Eric Anders fight, Marc-Andre likes to be in positions where he is, like I said, in the clinch, landing elbows. And even if he's not winning, right? Like you saw the Julian Marquez fight. Julian was landing some nice elbows, beating him up in the clinch a little bit. But even if he's not winning, he's able to maintain, or I'm sorry, like, what's the word I'm looking for? He's able to like persevere through a lot of pain. And he ends up just wearing on his opponents to the point where now all of a sudden they can't keep up with his pace, and he is winning the exchanges. He is getting inside positioning. He is the one landing the knees, coming over top with the elbows off the break, re-engaging in the wrestling. Like he thrives in those types of fights. And I think that if he can turn it into that type of fight, he can beat Chris Curtis. I think for Chris Curtis, it's got to be trying to keep things in the center, trying to counter Mark when he comes in aggressively. And when you get pushed up against the cage, you're digging for underhooks, maybe reversing position, putting his back on the cage, and disengaging as quickly as you can. You're just constantly trying to circle off the cage and disengage so that you don't get into this kind of war that Marc-Andre Barriault thrives in. But I like the momentum that Barriault's riding right now, and I think he picks up a win over Curtis. I do think he turns it into a gritty fight, and once it goes there, he's a hard guy to keep up with. I like Marc-Andre Barriault in this one. All right, Mike Mallot versus Neil Magny. Man, Neil Magny just has to fight like, I feel like prospect after prospect. Ian Gary, Phil Rowe, he picked up a good win in that fight, right? Who's another guy that he had to fight? Oh my God, it's on the tip of my tongue. Do I have his page pulled up? I think I do. Shavkat, obviously. Jeff Neal, right? I mean, Neil Magny has an extensive resume. 28-11, right? He's got almost 40 professional fights. And going up against a guy who's 10-1 right now in Mike Mallot. And a guy who has some nasty jiu-jitsu, man. That guillotine that he hit over Adam Fugit, I'm going to say Fugit, right? I think it's Adam Fugit. That guillotine he hit over Adam Fugit was fucking impressive. The way he like latched onto the neck and then just like his body just like suctioned to the guy. You know what I mean? Like he's got a tight jiu-jitsu game. He's definitely a threat when he gets there. And he's explosive on the feet, man. He uses a lot of kicks. He opens up in southpaw stance, but he'll switch frequently throughout the fight, mixes things up well. And I think that one thing that we saw a little bit in the Fugit fight is like he hurt Fugit on the feet and then he was able to latch onto the guillotine. But when he was able to take Fugit down throughout like the first round and stuff, but had a little bit of trouble passing and getting around his guard and maintaining top position there. And one thing about Neil Magny, man, is he's got them long ass fucking legs. And you even saw against Gilbert Burns. I mean, Gilbert ultimately sliced through him and got to the mount, hit the arm triangle on him. But he just makes things difficult for you. He's constantly getting hooks in, constantly swimming for underhooks, right? He's not an easy guy to deal with. And Phil Rowe had his back. And when he had his back, Phil Rowe's a pretty good submission guy, right? Like a pretty good jiu-jitsu guy. When he got to Magny's back, you don't really have this impending sense of doom for Magny because you know that he's just like been there so many times. And when he's fighting well, he's fighting in the clinch, right? He's pushing guys up against the cage, making it gritty. His boxing is a little bit, he will hit you because he's got such long arms, but I think he overextends himself a little bit. He's a little bit slow to withdraw his hands. So I don't think he wants to get into these drawn out striking exchanges against a guy like Mallot, who is very precise, right? Who does have great kicks and great precision and a lot of explosiveness and speed. I don't think he wants to be fighting that type of fight. I think he wants to push Mike up against the cage and make him fucking fight for 3 rounds. Make him fight a Neil Magny style fight. If Neil can do that, he has a good chance to win. But if Mike is able to get out and create separation and land his takedowns at will, obviously, I mean, like I feel like I'm saying the obvious shit here, right? If it goes Mike Mallot's way and he can Mallot's way, he's going to dictate, and if it goes Magny's way, he's going to dictate it. But I don't know. This is one of those matchups where I do feel like it's very cut and dry that way. Like with Strickland Plessis, I have no idea how it's going to play out. But in this one, I feel pretty strongly that if they're fighting in the clinch a lot, it'll be Neil that's the one pressing him, using his experience and just wearing on Mike Mallot slowly. Whereas if Mike is able to hold things in the center of the cage and use his speed and kind of like his youth to his advantage, I think he has a good chance to win this one, man. And they might only be a few years apart. Like, how old is Neil Magny? Neil might be 36. Yeah, Neil's 36. And Mike Mallot, I think, is 33, 32. So it's not like there's a huge age gap. Neal just has so many more miles on him in terms of how many fights he has, right? Coming off a tough loss against Ian Gary where he got outclassed. I just kind of like Mike Mallot in this one, man. I feel like it's a big moment for him, a big pay-per-view card. He's in Canada. He's on his home field. I just think he's going to fucking show out in this one, and I think he gets a finish, unfortunately. Every time I pick against Neil Magny, I feel like I end up being wrong, but I think Mike Mallot, this is a chance for him to shine, and I think he does so on Saturday night. So great fight, great matchup, but I got Mallot. All right, women's bantamweight title is on the line. Number 2 ranked Raquel Pennington versus number 3 Mayra Bueno Silva. So Mayra Bueno Silva obviously just picked up a win over Holly Holm, and then it was turned into a no contest because she tested positive for Ritalinic acid. And I think that she said it was because of her ADHD, right? She has medication for that to kind of keep her on track. And if you look at Ritalinic acid, obviously there's Ritalin, right? You can trace its roots into those types of medications. So not outside the realm of possibility that that's what it was. I think she got like a 4.5-month suspension, and now she's eligible to fight again. And she's taking on Raquel Pennington, who's coming off a big win over Ketlin Vieira, right? Split decision, close fight, but hey, Raquel Pennington's riding some momentum now, right? How many? Let me see. I want to say she's won 4 or 5 in a row. 5 fights in a row. Last 3 are over Ketlin Vieira, Aspen Ladd, and Macy Chiasson. So some good quality wins there from her. And Bueno Silva, obviously, again, it gets overturned. But to me, when I look at this, and if it is true about the ADHD medicine, I'm looking at this and I still in my head think that she beat Holly, right? So before that, knee bar over Lena Landsberg, and before that, an arm bar win over Stephanie Egger. Now, Bueno Silva is interesting because she has a lot of power in her hands, oddly, but I feel like she is better on the ground. I think that if these two get into boxing exchanges, if Raquel can stay centered and focused and maintain a consistent pace, I think Raquel has the boxing advantage. She's got to mind her P's and Q's, though, because I think Silva has a big power advantage, right? But Raquel does a great job of mixing up her targets. She works the body. She'll go up to the head. She rolls with punches well. She's got good head movement in and out of her combinations. She gets out of the way of shots well. Raquel Pennington can box, right? She does like to cover. I feel like I've watched her throw at least one Superman punch in almost every one of her fights. She loves throwing Superman punches to close the distance, and she's comfortable fighting in the clinch, right? I think for Bueno Silva, though, her advantage is going to come if she can catch Raquel out at the end of some of her strikes, right? Bueno Silva also has good kicks. She's just very powerful, man. And she does throw good combinations, but I think she's a little bit better on the ground. And I think that's where her best chance to beat Raquel Pennington is, right? Obviously, Raquel picked up a nice win over Macy Chiasson, right? But we have seen, she caught her with that ninja choke when she was pinned up against the cage. But Macy took her down earlier in that fight. Aspen Ladd managed to take Raquel down. I just think if Mayra Bueno Silva can put Raquel up against the cage repeatedly and make it that type of fight, eventually she's going to find a way to get to the takedown. And when she takes her down, I think she's going to be able to hit a submission of some kind on her. I think her jiu-jitsu is really high level. And for Raquel, I think that she's going to have to stave off a lot of takedown attempts. I think that Silva's going to be coming after her. I think she's going to be swinging with a lot of power. And then when she swings big like that, I think there's going to be a lot of crashing into these positions up against the cage where we have seen Raquel get taken down before. And if Silva can get her down, I think Silva can submit her. So key for Rocky is going to be circling constantly off the cage, right? Using a lot of footwork, dotting her up, getting all the way in and all the way out on your combinations, right? You don't want to be committing to things, giving her opportunities to level change underneath you, not you know what I mean? You don't want to be stepping into the exchanges and then getting stuck there and she's all underneath to your hips. It's got to be a lot of throwing what you need to throw and then getting all the way back out so that you don't get taken down, keeping your space. Again, same kind of thing we were talking about earlier in the Chris Curtis versus Barriault fight. But if Raquel starts getting her back pinned up against the cage, man, she's got to get to underhooks and circle off quickly. Not that she's not capable of fighting in the clinch. We've seen her throw great knees, do really good work from that position. But I think that it'll benefit Bueno Silva. So I think that also I think there's like a point where this starts turning in Raquel's favor, right? I think that Bueno Silva has probably not got a lot of experience with going 5 rounds, if any. I know she headlined, I think, in the Holly Holm fight, but no 5-round experience other than that. And she only went, 2 rounds against Holly? A round and a half? So it's like, what happens if this does start getting drug out into the 3rd, 4th, 5th round and Bueno Silva is able to maybe take Raquel Pennington down but not finish her? Or beat her up early and really pour it on thick, but then starts running out of energy, right? I could see it going that direction too. But if I had to pick, oh man, I think I would pick Raquel. I think right now I like the momentum that she's riding. I think she's fought some tough opposition lately. And I think that when the rubber meets the road, I think you're going to see Raquel Pennington step up. I think that if Mayra Bueno Silva isn't able to get her out of there early, the energy expenditure is going to be a big, big factor in this fight. And I think Raquel, with her veteran prowess, will be able to expend her energy more evenly and consistently beat up on Bueno Silva throughout the course of the fight and pick up a decision win. I think I'm taking Raquel. This is a close fucking fight, though. I really like this matchup, and would not be surprised at all if Bueno Silva pulls it off. But I think I'm going with Rocky, man. I think a lot of people kind of sleep on her sometimes, and I think she's very skillful, and she has all the potential in the world to get this done. So, yeah, I got Raquel Pennington in this one. And next, the headliner, middleweight bout between Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis. This is one where I feel like it could go so many different ways, right? But you look at Sean Strickland, he's kind of got this slow, methodical style, right? And he just kind of walks you down, boxes you. He's got a great jab, and he almost throws his punches with the shoulders. Like when he's coming over like the top with his right hand, his arm's almost extended out straight, and he's like swinging the momentum of his upper body to try and connect. Anyway, obviously the Philly shell, he's kind of made famous, right? He's just got a really good defensive style, doesn't get hit a whole lot, but I still think that there are those tendencies that he has to get a little bit reckless, and it's going to be interesting to see if he does that at all against Dricus. Like when Sean lands, it's not like Sean just throws everything with perfect technique. Like you will see that motherfucker get wild. Like he will throw some shots, and against a guy like Dricus du Plessis, who has a lot of that like awkward kind of power, and is also going to be trading and throwing from really weird angles because he has this is a weird style versus a weird style. Right? Like Dricus kind of fights on these like bent knees. He's kind of got this like, he's kind of like hunched over, like almost like crowding down into his stance. Too awkward versus Sean, who's very upright, right? But I don't know. I don't know what to think. And in those wild exchanges, I could see either of them landing and hurting one another, right? Especially Dricus, because like I said, he's got a lot of kickboxing experience, and I feel like in the pocket, he's just got this knack for like coming inside and landing those shots. Now, one thing that if I'm Sean Strickland and I'm going back and I'm watching Dricus's fights, I'm going back to the Derek Brunson fight, right? And I'm thinking to myself, if I can put a consistent pace on him, push him up against the cage, opportunities to take him down are going to be there. Right? I think that Dricus's win over Robert Whittaker was super fucking impressive. He was getting dotted up a little bit early in that fight, but then he kind of just like grabbed a hold of Whittaker's head, took him to the ground, threw him to the ground. And once he got on top of Whittaker, he did a great job of just taking what Whittaker gave him, slicing through, beating him up, and then he came out and hurt him in the second round and got the finish, right? I mean, it was a brilliant performance. But if I'm Strickland, I'm not getting so much caught up in the hype of what he did to Robert Whittaker. I'm looking at where can I find fucking failures in this guy's game. And I think that there's a little bit of sloppiness in fucking in the game of du Plessis. I think that he throws a little bit wild sometimes, and I think the Derek Brunson fight was a really good example of that. And man, in the wrestling exchanges, Brunson's a great wrestler though, but Brunson was just way out ahead of him. When he took the initiative and got on top, it just felt like Brunson was a way better grappler, but Brunson didn't pace himself accordingly. And du Plessis starting the second round, you kind of thought Brunson had the momentum. Du Plessis kind of took it back, and you could tell that Brunson was tired. And then he just wailed on him until he started ending up on top and picking up the finish, right? But Strickland is a guy who will put that pace on you methodically. We've seen him do it consistently, right? We saw it against Imavov. We saw it against Israel Adesanya. Like, he just comes at you at the same, he's just very consistent in his attack and his approach. And I think that if he does that to Du Plessis, man, Du Plessis could be in for a long night. Because I kind of feel like Du Plessis, he has a great smothering ground game. Like, what he did to Whitaker was super impressive, right? But Sean is a black belt. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he has a good ground game as well. And in fact, like, if you look at the Imavov fight, he took Imavov down several times in that fight. Like, he has a good wrestling game, and I feel like if Dricus pushes him in that area, people are going to be really surprised at how Strickland responds, right? The more I think about this fight, I could see it playing out a lot of different ways, but I almost feel that Strickland can win this fight by decision. He might be able to finish it by taking Du Plessis down and getting some ground and pound off on him, pushing. I just feel like Strickland has more ways to win, and with Du Plessis, I kind of think he's got to finish him on the feet. I think Sean's going to be hard to get out of there on the ground unless you hurt him or get him on the ground and hurt him and get him out through like TKO. I don't know that Dricus is going to have the skills necessary to submit a guy like Strickland, but I think that Strickland can get it done in a lot more areas. And again, at this level, energy expenditure and just the fact that Sean Strickland, if you saw him in the weigh-ins and stuff throughout this week, he looks great. I mean, he is fucking jacked right now. But also, I just think he's going to be riding that energy of being the fucking champion. Like, I think it's going to make him that much better, that much more confident, and I think you're going to see one of the best versions of Sean Strickland on Saturday night. Just my opinion. Like I said, this fight could go either way. I've gone back and forth on it so much, but the more I think about it, I just think the composure, the energy expenditure, the constant combinations that Sean's going to be able to throw, and the fact that we've kind of known Sean was really fucking good for a while now, and we're just now starting to see Du Plessis in this fight against Whitaker maybe clean up some of those mistakes that he was making early on in his UFC career against guys like Tavares, Darren Till, Brunson. He's not that fresh off of some of those fights where he was looking a little bit sloppy. So, for that reason, I got Sean Strickland, but I think that Dricus Du Plessis is one of those guys who could definitely win the title. I think he's got all the confidence in the world right now. I think he's coming off one of the biggest, the biggest win of his career. So again, he's got a lot riding for him right now, and this is a great fucking matchup. I'm excited for Saturday night. But that's going to wrap this one up, guys. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Much appreciated. If you enjoy, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, all that good shit. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time. Enjoy the fights. Bye-bye.